EBITDA. The other business I don't think is worth very much. I mean, it's literally selling iTunes cards in advance. The legacy business, which I guess has some stickiness, is people who are still prepaying, which is, that number is just shrinking. So maybe like a mid-single digits, might make sense.
Money grants valuation really elevated because two people tried to buy in the last year.
Yeah, it's a low double digits. I mean, you can use Western Union as well. They make a slightly higher margin than Western Union. I haven't spent a ton of time on that business, so maybe it deserves a slightly higher multiple.
So another question is, so this is obviously highly dependent on what the EU ends up doing. Are there precedents or examples? It's probably to Euronet's detriment that they're an American company charging high fees in Europe. But does Euronet have lobbyists or any sort of kind of sway, or do your peers have any sort of sway to kind of influence this body that's going to improve?
Yeah, that's a very good question. The lobbyist environment, specifically on payments, is much different in Europe than it is here. Part of the reason why PSD2, I mean, it was headline news for MasterCard and Visa interchange. I have a little excerpt here. So this is just a quote from one of the main public. So credit card issuers have suffered blows from reduction to 0.3%, with average European Union interchange falling by over 50% and potentially $2 billion annually sucked out of their revenues. The point is they're cutting fees, and MasterCard Visa hasn't been able to do anything, and just the overall attitude by the Parliament and European Commission has been kind of irreverent towards lobbyists and traditional payments companies. I mean, they really want digital and lower fees.
You're asserting the DCC is a bigger part of the event. So have you seen any change in their disclosure? As there's no extra warnings, there's no, in the MD&A, there's no...
No, there's absolutely nothing in documents. The only reason why I have that 5 to 16% number is because after the William Blair analyst downgraded based on deep regulatory risk, the Evercore analyst quoted the CFO on a call with him saying it's only 5 to 16%. That's the only disclosure.
No, the one with the spreadsheet on it. Is it around with the circles?
Oh. Sorry.
That one.
So another answer. One of the catalysts, I think, is that next Wednesday on the earnings call, I think they're going to have to answer, they're going to have to address DCC and exactly, what the contribution is. Because regulatory is escalated because the one downgrade did call it out, and because of the activist short that published 2 days ago. It's a guy named Rick, can't remember his last name. It's a research firm called Mox.
What's the 22nd bullet point that where 5 to 16 goes to 50 to 70? Sorry, I know you explained it, but
yeah.
Can you just crystallize why it's not 5 to 16, but it's 50 to 70?
They've been building ATMs in tourist destinations that don't have very high traffic. Traffic per ATM has shrunk. The business was declining until they launched DCC, and it's become much more profitable. And if you look, one other reason, if you look at the seasonality, it gets up to 50% EBIT margins in Q3, and in Q1, which is the lowest tourist traffic, it's a 15% margin business, just to give you a sense of the impact that tourists are having. That's
And you
right.
contend it says.
That's right.
Why is it that these DCC boxes are only in Europe? In other words, let's say it gets regulated the way in Europe, is it possible that they can start putting these boxes in Asia, in the US?
Yeah, good question. They built a bunch of ATMs in India in 2016, and they're very low margin, very low revenue, and they haven't had any success building up DCC there. So I think that's actually something that they've said they were going to try to do on calls. They were thinking they called value-added services. There's been no evidence.
The tourists in India were smarter and figured out not to use it, or was there some regulatory reason why they didn't build DCC into those ATMs in India?
Good question. That's something I haven't gotten to yet.
Okay, the first question that I had is like, how did you figure this out? Was you see, and it just seems like, you know, you have to know exactly where it is and then do a lot of digging.
Yeah, so it's, I'm interning at a fund. We get a lot of ideas sent to us. This idea came to me last fall. I had done an independent study on payments with a professor at Columbia last year. PSD2 was one of the things we focused on. I knew that regulation was kicking in January, so I was looking at different ways to.
So when you saw this, it raised your.
Yeah, I remembered I got an idea, that I looked at it, I thought, is that being impacted? And then I realized there was this merger stuff, and maybe there was like a mispricing. And then I started looking at the ATM, revenue per ATM per transaction declining, and then all of a sudden picking up.
The other thing is that if they're saying that DCC is 5 to 16% of the total, and you think it's 50 to 70%, like it seems like they might have an accounting issue. Like, who are the auditors?
So I don't think it's a fraud. I mean, you could contend that they're moving margin around in the different segments. After all, their money transfer business is out earning Western Union and MoneyGram. I just didn't get there yet. That's I didn't really look. I checked the balance sheet. I checked cash flow. I don't see any major accounting irregularities. I haven't digged there.
Well, it seems like you may have a big accounting irregularity. Because it sounds like they really mischaracterized
It's
it.
not disclosed.
And they
Yeah, it's
hadn't
not
publicly
disclosed.
said 5 to 16, that was
That was just from the sell side saying that that's what the CEO.
And the
told
sell
us.
side analysts, they're not concerned about this?
The sell side analysts cover a lot of companies. There's one that's not on Bloomberg called Autonomous that I spoke to today. That has never. They're very smart on the name. They covered it for 10 years. I had a quote in here from them. They've never published on DCC, and they made me walk through my analysis because they were confused.
Yes, you could contact the SEC and give this to them on a silver platter. Like, people have done that. I know from personal, I did it. And it takes a couple months, but it was a lot faster than I thought.
Yeah, I think the way to make money quickly here is to send something to the BBC in Europe while they're in comment period for the PSD2 and get them to run a report about how people are getting, about a U.S. company is filching ATM customers in Europe, and then the European Commission basically has to do something.
Do you have a sense of it? And you mentioned the next 5 to 6 months. Do you have a sense of when or?
So there are panels now. Being the head of American Express Currency was on a panel last week where she said Amex would never use DCC period because it's unfair to consumers. There are people talking about it. There was a comment period for a survey that ended in October, and they're supposed to publish any day. I need to spend more time on sort of the timing of European regulatory, but there's certainly been a lot going on over the last few months.
So if your company knows this is 57%, so you're right, and they know this, and they know it's going away.
And there's
I would think that they would want a 500 grand project.
Yeah, I think they will. I think that, so the company said they're waiting and watching now, because when in the Ant MoneyGram merger, MoneyGram had to disclose a few investigations that that Euronet was unaware of. So they claim that right now they're diligencing those investigations. I think they have to buy. The reason why I had a really bullish downside case, assuming great synergies, and I still think you have 2-to-1 and a very accelerated deal closing, and I think you still have 2-to-1 asymmetry. And I think post buying them, they'll have a company that has almost zero equity value and is now 4 times levered. And I don't think it's going to continue trading at 16, 17 times, which is where I had it in my downside case. And I think it's, they're still facing these structural challenges. And I think a lot of it's priced in, because you saw once the deal fell through, the stock was up 12%. And so I think people are going to be cautious. And I think there's a timing difference between how much money you could make if DCC regulations get cut in 3 months, and how much you could lose if everything goes swimmingly from an M&A perspective, because people are going to wait until the latter plays out.
What's the risk if DCC regulation is not passed, or it's passed in such a way that this clever CEO is able to come up with a workaround? It seemed to have been growing significantly, the number of ATMs in Europe that have DCC. So any idea where we are in that rollout? In other words, if DCC, they find a workaround, can they just continue rolling this out and, it's a compounder and we're in trouble?
I think they could. I think they're best. So number one, just from the announcement, I don't think you're going to see it pop, because it's just not in the stock right now. So I think you're safe there. In terms of how they could otherwise deploy capital, I think they'd probably focus on APAC. We've yet to see, Indian ATMs were deployed in 2016, and they don't break those out. And they claim to be adding value-add services. So it's kind of too early to say how, what the returns will be on an investment like that.
But specifically, if they find a workaround in Europe to any DCC regulation, how much does this thing continue to grow?
Where they could somehow get the same revenue out of an ATM.
Right.
I suppose it could grow at what consensus assumes they do that aggressive rollout, and I think you're looking at, losing like 16, 20% over the next year and a half. You kind of just make the same assumptions, but they're able to deploy capital at the same, returns, I guess.
Why did you stop that at 14?
Because that's when they rolled out India, so the numbers dropped off significantly, and they don't break out India, so it's tough to make it year-over-year comparison.
And he's losing money.
They're losing, it just went way down. You'd see like a major decline
You
in.
have it on the slide.
I don't.
Rent per transaction is much lower in India.
Oh yeah, seasonality. There's where seasonality dropped, but I explained that's why. Because of the,
Well, since you're a payment specialist, what do you think of the FEC case? Did you want to work for us? I'm just kidding.
All right, thank you,
Excellent.
Excellent, thank you very much. We got through them. All right, if you would all leave. No, we have cocktails, we have some more food still, I guess.
Yep.
We're going to commandeer this room with the judges. We'll be out in about 40 seconds. No, we'll be out in a few minutes. But if everybody else would go, that'd be great. I say one more round of applause. That goes for our I'm looking forward to a fun debate with the judges. Thanks. All right. You guys did great. Great. Oh, yeah, go ahead. Thank you.